Chosen one, the danger that was sent to destroy you has already failed. While you were moving in your purpose, a sophisticated trap was being funded in the shadows, but the spiritual mechanics of your protection caused a total collapse. The reality is staggering. A high-profile player just lost a fortune trying to eliminate you. The strategy fell apart because you are the problem they cannot solve. Nobody spends a fortune on something that does not matter. High-profile players do not mobilize serious resources, coordinate sophisticated operations, and deploy real money against someone who was going to stay ordinary. That is not how people at that level think. Every move they make has to justify itself. Every dollar they spend has to have a projected return. Precision is never wasted on small targets. So here is the first revelation, and it is the one that changes everything. The size of the operation against you is the clearest measure of your actual worth that you have ever received. The opposition did not come after you because you were weak or broken or easy to take out. They came after you because they could see where you were going, and where you were going threatened everything they had built. What they saw when they looked at your trajectory was a multiplier, not just someone with talent, although you have that in abundance, not just someone with potential, although your potential is absolutely real. They saw someone whose gifts do not operate in isolation. When you move, other people start moving. When you speak, people who have been silent for years suddenly find their voice. When you build, people who were told they had no business building anything start picking up tools. When you rise, you do not rise alone, you pull an entire generation up behind you. One fully activated version of you does not stay one person's breakthrough. It becomes a movement that cannot be bought, cannot be controlled, and cannot be redirected once it has momentum, and that is precisely the problem they decided to spend a fortune trying to solve. The opposition has infrastructure. They have systems carefully constructed over a long period of time to keep certain conversations quiet, certain people suppressed, and certain doors closed. One person like you, fully awake, fully walking in purpose, fully connected to what God placed inside of you, starts creating friction in that machinery. You start waking people up who were supposed to stay asleep. You start making the suppression visible simply by refusing to accept it. So a decision was made. Get to you before you peak. Stop you before you fully understand what you are carrying. Reach you before the resources, the relationships and the clarity fall into place to make you genuinely untouchable. The moment that decision was made, the high-profile player behind it told on themselves. Because you do not mobilize that level of precision against someone whose ceiling is average. You do not spend a fortune trying to prevent a future that was never going to matter. The decision to come after you was a confession. It was a confession that your future is worth more than what they were willing to spend to stop it. Write that down. Put it somewhere you will see it when you feel small, because the investment they made against you is the most honest assessment of your potential that you have ever received. Here is where the details matter, because understanding how the operation was constructed is the only way you will recognize it if another version shows up. It was built in layers. Sophisticated operations always are. The first layer was financial. This was not emotional spending from a place of jealousy or spite. This was strategic capital allocated, budgeted and deployed the same way a corporation funds a hostile acquisition. The decision to fund the operation came from a calculated analysis of the expected return. What would it cost to stop you versus what it would cost to let you keep going? The math told them to spend, and spend they did. That level of investment communicates something you need to internalize permanently. The opposition had already calculated your value before they spent a single dollar against you. What you were worth to them as a threat was worth more than what they were willing to pay to neutralize you, which means the fortune they lost was never the ceiling of what they believed your future was capable of producing. The second layer was people, not strangers, not obvious adversaries, not anyone you would have recognized as a threat on sight. High-profile players do not send easily identified enemies. They send mirrors. They send people who look like you, sound like you, and share your values, or who can perform sharing them convincingly enough to get past your discernment. They send people whose presence makes you feel genuinely understood, because the feeling of being understood is one of the most disarming experiences a human being can have. It lowers every wall. It creates the kind of access that normally takes years to earn. And while you were finally feeling seen, information was flowing out of your life and into the operation. Your next move, your current vulnerability, the wound that had not fully healed, the dream you had not told anyone about yet, the unguarded entry point into your world that you did not even know you had left open. If you recognized yourself in this message, hype this video to guide other chosen ones to this truth. The third layer was psychological. This was the quiet war, the one that does not leave marks you can show anyone, the doubt that arrived precisely at your lowest moments, the internal voice that questioned your worth right before a breakthrough, the exhaustion that set in exactly when you had every reason to push forward, the persistent suggestion that maybe the resistance you were feeling was coming from inside you, from your own limitations, your own unhealed wounds, your own lack of readiness. That internal war was not random. It was engineered specifically to make you the architect of your own retreat. There was a moment, and you know exactly which one, where something inside you flagged that a person or a situation was not what it appeared to be. Your spirit sent the signal, your gut registered the warning, and then your mind, in an effort to be fair and generous and not paranoid, talked you out of it. That moment of override was the gap they built the entire operation around, the predictable human tendency to doubt our own perception, the deeply socialized instinct to give the benefit of the doubt. The opposition counted on it. They built that tendency into the architecture as a reliable variable. What they could not build around was what was already active inside you, something that was quietly, invisibly working against everything they constructed, and they did not know it was happening until it was far too late. When the initial phase of the operation did not produce results, the people running it did not retreat. They recalibrated and escalated. This is how high-level thinking operates. A failed first approach is not a signal to walk away. It is a signal to find the variable that was missed and adjust for it. So more was spent, more sophisticated targeting was deployed, more assets were positioned, the approach was refined based on what had not worked, and the operation came back harder. The relational angle intensified. Charming, attentive, perfectly timed energy entered your life at exactly the moment you were most open to receiving it, not by accident, but by design. Someone who spoke your language, matched your frequency, and said the things that felt like healing showed up. Access to your heart meant access to your whole world, your plans, your fears, your closest relationships, your timeline. Everything that could be used to steer you became available the moment that access was granted. Simultaneously, the financial interference ran underneath everything else. Opportunities materialized and then dissolved at the last moment. Resources were almost in your hands and then were not. Pathways that should have been clear were inexplicably blocked. Every time you approached the threshold of genuine independence, something redirected you, something that looked like bad timing, like a chain of unfortunate circumstances, like the universe simply not cooperating with you. Underneath both of those ran the escalation of the internal war, the middle-of-the-night questioning, the comparisons that made you feel irreparably behind, the persistent suggestion that perhaps you were the obstacle, perhaps you were the reason nothing was working. Every time the operation got close, something moved you, not always consciously, not always through your own wisdom or foresight. Sometimes a direction shifted at the last moment, for reasons you could not fully explain. Sometimes a door shut in your face that you were furious about, and that closed door was the only thing standing between you and a trap that would have cost you years of your life. The investment kept growing. The timeline kept stretching past every projection that had been made, and the person who authorized the fortune started getting nervous because serious players run entirely on results, and the results were not coming, because the math was not accounting for the most important variable in the equation. You've probably noticed a lot of Chosen One channels on YouTube have stopped publishing, videos pulled, voices silenced. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. That's exactly why I'm putting you onto something real, Destiny Engine. I built this because I was done watching Chosen Ones get dragged through betrayal, isolation and attacks while their enemies strutted around unchecked. I want to help you accelerate the speed of your divine justice and step fully into your purpose. And the beauty of it, you don't even have to lift a finger. Destiny Engine takes their downfall and flips it into your rise. This isn't another meditation app. It's declassified consciousness technology, the same mind programming tools your enemies once used to install fear, competition and scarcity, re-engineered to restore your sovereignty and align you with the cooperative, upgraded operating framework. It generates personalized sequences mapped to your divine purpose. The hardest thing you'll do is put on headphones, press play, and watch your enemies keep digging their own grave. Join Destiny Engine to support your favorite channels and use it for your own rise. It's a 360 win. Start your Destiny Engine for $1 today and turn everything they did to break you into fuel for your rise. Link in the description. Here is the concept at the center of everything that happened to you, and this is the understanding you will come back to for the rest of your life. Think of your life as a vehicle, not just any vehicle, one built for a specific road, a specific destination, and a specific cargo. The engine is your gifts, the fuel is your calling, the route is your purpose, the destination is everything God said your life would produce, everyone it would reach, everything it would build, every person who would be freed because you showed up and refused to quit. The entire operation, all the money, all the positioned people, all the psychological warfare had one ultimate objective. It wanted to take over the vehicle. Not destroy it outright, because that would have been wasteful. The plan was more elegant than that. The goal was to get behind the wheel, redirect your gifts, your platform, your influence and your reach, but steer all of it somewhere that served the agenda of the high-profile player instead of the purpose of God. The plan was to use your voice to spread their message, use your credibility with your community to deliver their agenda, and use your gifts, the very things placed inside you to set people free, as tools that kept people exactly where the opposition needed them to stay. That is the most important thing I want you to understand about what was built against you. The goal was never silence. Silence would have been a waste of your reach. The goal was counterfeit activation, a version of you operating under your name and carrying your reputation, pointed at a destination you would never have chosen had you known where the road was actually going, and the operation stalled every single time, not because you were more powerful than the opposition in human terms, not because you were smarter or better resourced or more strategically brilliant. The operation stalled because you cannot take over a vehicle that already has a driver. Your vehicle was already occupied. God had already claimed the wheel, set the destination, and sealed the route before the opposition ever made their first move. When the operation reached for the ignition, nothing responded. The force that backs you is not a human resource. It cannot be outspent. It cannot be outwitted. It cannot be negotiated with, intimidated, or purchased. It simply holds what it has claimed, and what it has claimed is you. The operation stalled, and stalled people start making mistakes, expensive ones. When a high-level operation stalls long enough, the cost structure becomes unsustainable. The people who had been positioned inside your life to monitor and manage you started to lose their footing. Something about being in your presence was not what they had been briefed to expect. The frequency you carry, the thing God placed inside you that cannot be counterfeited, began to affect the people who had been sent to work against you. Some of them started to feel the weight of their assignment more than the value of the payment. Some of them, the ones who spent enough time in your orbit, felt what was actually living inside you and could not undo that experience. Some of them moved toward you instead of against you. When that shift happened, the intelligence flowing out of your life dried up. The operation was now working with outdated information, a profile of you that no longer matched who you had become, because every hard season that had been designed to diminish you had instead been building you. It had been expanding your capacity, fortifying your character, and developing in you an understanding of pressure and spiritual opposition that made you more formidable with every passing season, not less. The plan had been built for an earlier version of you, and that version no longer existed. Then came the financial reversal. Resources that had been redirected away from you did not disappear into a void. They moved towards sources that were being prepared to come toward you from angles the operation could not monitor or intercept. The pipeline the opposition thought they had severed was being rerouted. The financial attack was becoming a financial repositioning that actually favored you. Then came the exposure, not all at once, slowly, the way truth always surfaces, through a detail that did not add up, a contradiction that could not be explained away, a pattern that became undeniable once enough evidence accumulated. Someone outside of the situation saw something you were too close to see clearly, and said it out loud at precisely the right moment. The curtain began to pull back. Some of the confusion you experienced, some of the grief, some of the isolation, that was not your life falling apart. That was the operation falling apart around you. The painful exits, the abrupt endings, the situations that dissolved without clear explanation, those were access points being severed, assets losing their positions, and elements of the infrastructure collapsing as the operation lost coherence. You were not watching yourself lose, you were watching the opposition collapse. The difference between those two experiences is everything. While the opposition was running its operation against you, God was running a counter-operation that was more sophisticated, better resourced, and built on intelligence the opposition had no access to. You were never outmatched. You were never at genuine risk of losing what God had sealed on your life. What you experienced as struggle was actually strategic repositioning. What felt like failure was often God dismantling a trap before you walked all the way into it. What felt like isolation was God quarantining the operation, creating distance between you and the infrastructure that had been built around your life, so it could collapse without pulling you down with it. Every delay was a detour around a destruction you never got to see. Every relationship that ended was an access point that was closed before it could be weaponized at a critical moment. Every financial setback was you being kept out of a position of vulnerability that the operation was counting on placing you in. You were not struggling. You were being navigated in real time through a minefield you did not have the visibility to see clearly. The people who were sent to drain you, some of them are now the ones who have information. Some of them, having spent enough time in your presence to feel what actually lives inside you, now have accounts to give. They know how the operation was built. They know who built it, and people who feel used by a high-profile player do not stay permanently quiet, especially when the power that required their silence starts to visibly crumble. The people who were placed inside your life as instruments against you are becoming witnesses on your behalf. Think carefully about what that means. The fortune spent against you funded the placement of people who are now positioned to surface the truth about what was done. The investment in your destruction is producing the evidence of your vindication. Every resource that was deployed against you is being repurposed for you. That is not a motivational concept. That is the operational reality of what happens when a high-profile player goes up against someone that the most powerful force in the universe has decided to protect. In every coordinated operation there is a visible layer, the people you interacted with, the faces out front, and the ones whose involvement you may have sensed even if you could not prove it. But above the visible layer there is always the architect, the one who funded it, the one who designed the strategy, approved the budget, positioned the assets, and then made absolutely certain that no direct connection between themselves and the action could ever be traced back to them. This person carries real status, the kind that entire communities have been built around, the kind that generates trust, followership, and access to systems that ordinary people do not know exist. This person has operated with that level of invisible influence for a long time, and done so successfully because the distance they maintain between themselves and the action has always been their protection. But that protection has a ceiling, and that ceiling is determined by what God decides to do with it. When exposure is authorized at the highest level, distance becomes irrelevant. The further back a person has been standing in the shadows, the more significant the light looks when it finally reaches them. And the light is reaching, receipts are surfacing, patterns are becoming undeniable. People who were inside the operation, people who are no longer protected by the power that compelled their silence, are beginning to give accounts. The community that extended trust and access to this person is beginning to notice the inconsistencies, small things at first, a timeline that does not add up, an explanation that requires too much generosity to accept, a version of events that keeps shifting in ways that are difficult to ignore once you are paying close attention. You do not need to be the one who accelerates any of this. You do not need to carry the weight of making the truth visible. Your assignment is simply to be so undeniably, consistently, and powerfully yourself that every lie constructed about you becomes impossible to maintain in your presence. Your character is already doing the work. Your gifts are already doing the work. Your gifts are already doing the work. Your gifts are already doing the work. Your character is 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 already doing the work. The fact that you are still standing, still building, still moving, still carrying everything that was supposed to have been taken from you is the most powerful argument against everything that was built to contain you. The cover is going, and when it is fully gone, losing the fortune will turn out to have been the smallest consequence of coming after you. The financial loss is significant, but it is recoverable. What is not recoverable is everything the failure costs beyond the money. Every person who participated in the operation now holds leverage over the one who ran it. Every favor that was called in to fund the play now represents a debt owed to someone who watched the whole thing collapse with nothing to show for it. Every reputation that was quietly put on the line to run this strategy is now under the scrutiny of every person who extended trust based on that reputation. The high-profile player cannot simply write off the failure and move forward cleanly. Too many people know too much. Too many resources were involved for the fallout to remain contained. The network that was built to execute the operation is now fractured. Some participants are creating distance as quietly and quickly as possible. Some are calculating how to reposition themselves for what comes next. Some are simply looking for the exit because they never fully believed in the play and want no part of the consequences that are building. And the people who backed the high-profile player, who gave access, influence and resources because they trusted the judgment behind the operation, are reassessing. Because when someone at that level makes a call this confidently and gets it this wrong, serious people ask the question that every discerning person eventually asks. If this person was this wrong about this, what else have they been wrong about? That question, once it enters the air, does not go away quietly. Every system that was being used to keep you contained, to keep your gifts suppressed, to keep the doors closed on spaces you are supposed to occupy, each of those systems is losing the coherence required to hold. And as that coherence dissolves, you are gaining ground. The collapse of what was against you is not the destination. The collapse is the clearing. What fills the clearing? That is what this was always about. You are stepping into the most significant chapter of your purpose. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because the primary forces that were blocking your forward movement are now occupied with their own unraveling. The road that was being deliberately congested is opening, and you are about to discover what your natural velocity looks like when nothing is actively working against it. It is faster than anything you have experienced before. The gifts that were being suppressed are coming out at full volume. The ideas that kept arriving in you without the resources to execute them are now being matched with real backing. The financial doors that were being held shut are not cracking open, they are opening fully, because the people who were positioned to hold them closed are no longer in position to do so. The genuine connections are coming. You will recognize them immediately because they will feel entirely different from what you have experienced before. No energy drain, no subtle redirection away from your purpose, no conversation that consistently finds its way back to your limitations, just clean forward-moving alignment that will make your previous managed relationships look exactly like what they were, containment strategies that had been dressed up as support. The hard seasons did not just protect you, they built you. Every season of opposition you walked through expanded your capacity in a way that smooth prosperity alone never could have. You are not just walking into an open road, you are walking into it with more wisdom, more character, more discernment, and more understanding of how opposition operates than any version of you that could have arrived here without going through what you went through. Some people receive everything they prayed for, and it undoes them, not because they did not deserve it, but because they had not yet been built for the altitude. The pressure at the level you are walking into requires a specific kind of foundation, one that cannot be purchased or bypassed, only developed through the kind of seasons you just survived. You are ready, not because you are perfect, you are ready because you are prepared. And prepared people do not squander what they have been given. You came out of the fire refined, not consumed. So let me give you the operating posture for what comes next. Your discernment is your primary security system, and you need to keep it active without apology. The tactics will evolve. They will be more sophisticated now because the people who designed the operation know what did not work. They will come at you with more elegance and less visibility. But your spirit already knows the frequency of a setup. It registered it before and you talked yourself out of listening. This time, trust the signal immediately. When something feels wrong, that feeling is not anxiety. That feeling is intelligence arriving before the visible evidence does. Do not override your discernment in order to appear gracious or open. High-profile players always try to reframe your awareness as a character flaw, calling it paranoia, bitterness, or an inability to receive good things. Recognize that reframe for what it is. It is a tactic specifically designed to get you to voluntarily lower the one defense they cannot disable from the outside. Release the people who were positioned to manage you. Release them not with drama, and not with a confrontation that centers them and costs you energy. Release them with a quiet, permanent, unbothered decision that the next chapter of your life does not include them. Your spirit has already identified who these people are. Your mind has been negotiating with that knowledge longer than it should have. Stop negotiating. Make the decision. Honor that decision every day without offering explanations, and without reopening the door when those people circle back with a new angle. The space that release creates is sacred ground. Let it breathe. What is coming to fill it will not look like what came before. You will not recognize the right people by how familiar they feel. You will recognize them by how free you feel in their presence, free in a way you have not felt in longer than you can clearly remember. Build in the quiet. Visibility before security creates vulnerability. Everything that was used against you was accessed because you were visible about your plans before they were protected. your next move, your current vision, your growing momentum, those belong to an audience only after they are established enough to withstand scrutiny. Build first, let the finished work introduce itself on its own terms. Walk like someone who already knows the outcome, not with arrogance, with the deep settled calm of a person who has watched God block every move made against them and has finally understood what that means. You are not fighting for your future anymore. You are walking into it. Walk accordingly. You are not trying to survive anymore. You are building something that will outlast every person who invested in stopping it. Fewer people are present now because some of them read the situation and removed themselves from the fallout radius as quietly as possible. The file with your name on it is still on the table, but nobody is opening it because everyone left in that space has arrived at the same conclusion, the one they resisted the longest, because accepting it requires them to admit something they have never had to admit in their entire careers. They cannot touch you, not because you are hiding, not because you are running, not because you are waiting with your guard raised. You cannot be touched because you are operating at a frequency they have no access to. The covering on your life is not situational or conditional. It does not depend on your performance, your perfection, or your circumstances. It was sealed before you were born, and it has been reconfirmed through every single attack that landed nowhere near its intended mark. What was built against you is now the most expensive education they have ever paid for, a lesson they never wanted to learn, from a target they never should have chosen. You are not a viable target. The return on coming against you is categorically impossible to achieve, because what backs you is not a human resource. It is not a network, a reputation, a financial position, or a strategic alliance. It is the highest authority in existence, and that authority does not negotiate with opposition. It simply holds what it has claimed, and it has claimed you. Meanwhile, in every space that was being managed to keep you out, in every conversation being controlled to suppress your name, and in every financial channel that was being redirected away from your hands, that management is ending now. Your gifts are moving at full velocity. Your voice is reaching people who have been waiting for exactly the frequency you carry. What belongs to you financially is finding its way to you through channels that the opposition could not monitor or block. The people who are genuinely aligned with your purpose, not positioned to manage you, not sent to monitor you, not performing alignment as a strategy, they are entering your proximity. And you will know them the moment they arrive because of how free you feel in their presence. Every person in your community who has watched you stay standing through what would have destroyed most people is receiving something through your example that you may not fully see yet. Your refusal to be eliminated is giving people permission to believe in their own protection. Your persistence in purpose is making other people's purpose feel genuinely possible. Your willingness to keep building when everything pointed toward collapse is becoming the evidence that someone else is using right now to take their next step forward. You are a multiplier. That was always the threat. That is still the gift. Every step you take forward generates movement in the people around you. Every door you walk through opens a pathway for someone who is watching. What was meant to be a targeted elimination of one person keeps producing the exact outcome the operation was designed to prevent: more people waking up, more gifts being activated, more momentum building in directions that cannot be contained. You were never the prey. You were always the apex. You were always the one placed at the top of this particular assignment, not through violence, not through manipulation, not through the tools the opposition uses, but through covering, through calling, through a divine appointment that was settled long before any high-profile player ever learned your name. The fortune is gone, the plan is finished, the cover is coming off, and you are still here. Walk forward like what you are, the one who could not be bought, the one who could not be broken, the one who could not be removed from a vehicle that God was already driving, and the one who watched a high-profile player spend a fortune trying to eliminate them and came out stronger with every season the attempt continued. The road ahead is open. The covering is active. The same force that blocked every move made against you is the one going before you right now. Go build what they spent everything trying to prevent. You were made for this.